Welcome to the Medium in the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, the medium in the middle. This podcast is going to walk you through my journey into mediumship and how I came to realize that I could communicate with souls that have passed over. My adventure started just over a year ago when unusual situations started happening to me. It wasn't until I really started to pay attention to them that it all started to come together. I wrote down everything that I was experiencing this past year in a little black book, and this podcast is going to be a recap of all of those memories leading up to where I am today in my mediumship journey. I will be releasing new episodes every Tuesday, and I recommend listening to the podcast in order, starting with episode 1, as my story will unfold more week by week. If you would like to stay connected with me, follow me on Instagram at Medium in the Middle. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 22. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about part 2 of what happened at my cousin's wedding. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, pause this episode, go back to episode 21, and listen to the first half of the story, and this is going to be the second half. So before we get into this episode, I'm being really called to pull a card for my audience, so for you as the listener. And as I was just shuffling the cards, my intention was what the world needs to know right now. So I'm not sure if this is just happening to me. The past few weeks, I've received a lot of bad news in my circle, so nothing specifically bad has happened to me, but a lot of bad things have been happening to people around me, or tragedies. People getting sick, people passing away, people getting into accidents. Just a lot of stuff has been happening where all the news seems to be not good news. And I was really thinking to myself this week, why is there so much bad happening right now? This has to be a season, a reason, what's going on? And it's really hard to find a reason when bad things are happening. So as I was just shuffling the cards, this card literally fell out and fell onto the floor. So I am playing with an oracle card deck, and the card is number 29, Coming to Life. And when I open my book to read what it stands for, it is something beautiful is being born in your life. So I'll read the description, but just that alone kind of really resonated with me because whenever there is endings and deaths, there's always renewal and birth and change and new. And I really feel like this time right now is a lot of change and a lot of shedding of what we don't need and bringing in new things. And it's really hard to see that when negative things are happening. So I'll read the card description. When you look at your life, can you see how you've grown and evolved over time? Perhaps you shed skins and identities and created new ones, or at the very least matured in your ideas about yourself and the world you inhabit. You know things take time, and Spirit's timetable is rarely in sync with your own. This card indicates that a long-held dream is beginning to show signs of life. You must try not to coax it along or shape it according to your desires. Spirit knows the best form for the manifestations of this dream, and your life can become even better than you could possibly imagine. Now is the time for reverence and awe. Allow the contours of your path to be carved by the hands of the divine. All you have to do is show up. This card also really speaks to me personally because in just a few short weeks, I'm leaving my full-time job so that I can do more Reiki and take more clients. And yeah, this really resonated with the change that I'm going to and trusting that everything is happening for a reason and at the right time and I'm going to be okay. So I hope that this card resonated with you or it applies to your life somehow. But I just really felt that I needed to pull a card for my listeners today. So I say this every episode, but if you haven't already and you are an iTunes user, I would love a rating and a review. If you scroll to the bottom, you can do it so quickly, and it really helps me out in the podcast world. Just more people can find me that way, and I can get more listeners. So thank you very much for your ratings and your reviews. I love them, and I really enjoy reading them. Alrighty, let's jump right into part 2. So, as I mentioned in part 1, I started with channeling the bride's grandpa, and he spoke to the bride and her mother. And after that, I kind of went back to my other cousins, told them what happened, and more things started to funnel through. So, I'm going to be telling the 3 other experiences on today's episode. And I'm going to start first with my cousin's boyfriend. So the first one happened by my cousin asking me if I could channel her boyfriend's grandpa for him. She said that they were really close and she thinks that he would really like to kind of connect with him. And I said to her, "Did they used to golf together a lot?" And she said, "I don't know, you should ask him." So I said, okay. So I went over to him and I asked him if they used to golf together a lot. I said, "Hey, did you used to golf a lot with your grandpa?" And he said, "No, not really." I said that he was saying that he wants him to go to the place that they always talked about going, and it almost seemed unattainable. But wherever this is, he's shaking his arms back and forth. So if he's not golfing, it's something where your hands are moving back and forth. So in my mind's eye, I kind of saw his grandpa like wailing his arms. It looked like golf to me, but it could be something else. And my cousin's boyfriend was a skeptic, so he told me this from the beginning when I met him, and all my cousins were kind of telling him about me. He was just like, "I don't believe, but if you believe, that's cool." He was super respectful about it. So when I did start to tell him about his grandpa, he was giving me nothing. To be honest, he was saying no to most things that I was saying. And he was just like, "Nope, doesn't make sense, doesn't land." So then I just kept going and I said, "Okay, if this isn't making sense for you, I'm just going to tell you what he's telling me." So for reference of this story, we're going to call my cousin's boyfriend Johnny. So I said, "Okay, Johnny, if this doesn't make sense for you, that's fine. I'm just going to tell you what he's telling me the way I understand it." So I just continued going with what the grandpa was channeling through. So I said that Johnny was going to come into some money and it's going to be in August. And whatever the amount of money that he's going to get, it's going to be the exact amount of what this trip would have costed. So for example, if he comes into $3,200, he's going to get that amount, and that's how much the trip is going to be. So his grandpa is saying, when you get that chunk of money, remember that I said I want you to spend the money on the trip that we said we would always take together. He ended up telling me afterwards that him and his grandpa were meant to go on a trip to Italy, and when they were there, they were supposed to do this boxing thing. So they were going to go to Italy for this boxing trip. And I was like, "Oh, that makes sense because I see wailing of the arms. I thought maybe golf, but it could also be boxing for sure." And then I just continued on and I said, "In June, something big is going to happen at work for you." I said, "It's going to be something unexpected but well-deserved. Something like someone is going to leave their position who you would never think was going to leave. Like this person has been there for 30 years, is going to be there for 20 more years, but that position is going to open up and it's going to come available and you're going to get this role. And from that, maybe that's where you're going to get this chunk of money that you need to go do this trip that you've been waiting to do." And then Johnny's eyes kind of light up and he looked at me and he says, "Everything before this was kind of a far stretch, golfing to boxing, kind of general." He's like, "But that last part was a little too close to home and too true about his work situation." He said, "It's already kind of in the works right now, and he isn't able to talk about it with anyone because it isn't for sure and nothing is confirmed. But it definitely is that exact situation where someone is in a position where they would have never left, but they are leaving." And that was a kind of aha moment for him where maybe he believed me a little, but he was like, "Oh yeah, like that lands and makes a lot of sense." And this actually was really interesting because I said some things about his grandpa and he was like, "Yeah, yeah." But then once I started talking about work, his eyes were just like going bigger and bigger and bigger. It was really interesting to see like what people need to hear for them to be like, "Oh, like maybe this is a thing. Maybe this is real. Maybe you do know." So then after that happened, I walked back to my cousins and I told them that Johnny's grandpa had come through and he had talked a little bit about a trip that he needs to take and how he said some things were going to happen for work with him. And my cousins were all sitting around a table. And my one cousin looked at me and he said, "Do you have anything for my girlfriend here?" And she was sitting right beside, and I looked at her and I looked back at my cousin and I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, do you have anything for her? Like, Steph, she would really want to know if you did." And just the look in my cousin's eyes when he said this to me melted my heart, and I knew it was important. I mentioned this in part 1, but I was really trying not to channel because we were at a wedding and I had been drinking, and I just really don't like to do it when I'm out in public because this exact thing happens. The ball gets rolling and it's one person, then another person, then another person. But the way that he looked at me and asked me, I knew it was important. And this was the first time that I had met his girlfriend. It was at the wedding that I had met her, so I didn't know her very well at all. So I was kind of looking at my cousin when I was saying this information and looking back to her. And I said, "I'm getting mom's side very strongly. Like, I'm really getting mom's side, and it's a female figure, like someone who would be big, important in your life. So is it like grandma on your mom's side, auntie on your mom's side? Like, mom's side is very, very strong." And I'm looking at her, and she starts to tear up. And I look back at my cousin, and he's nodding his head super quickly. And he's like, "Steph, it's her mom." And I was like, "Oh, are you sure? Because this woman would have passed a little while ago, but I feel like she's still this like mother figure to me." And she was like, "Yeah, my mom died when I was younger." And in that moment, I was like, "Okay, you come over here and sit with me." So we went over to a separate table, and I just talked to her for 10 or 15 minutes on her own. I'm not going to get into the details of that conversation because they were very personal to her life, and she's a young girl and she lost her mom when she was young. But it was really moving, and it really kind of brought us close together very quickly. I talked about her sister, and it was a really incredible experience for both of us, I think. So when we both went back to the table, there was kind of this new air, and it was just really magical, I guess is the only way that I can explain it. And I've channeled mother energies before. Mom and dads and brothers or sisters are those who come often. But because this was for someone who was so young, it was a different experience, and it was really special. Things like that experience and that conversation are what make me want to keep driving forward and do mediumship and pursue it and put myself out into the world as a medium and take any criticism, or if people think I'm crazy or they don't believe me. It's when those conversations can change or affect someone's life, like literally change their life. That's what blows me away about this work, and it what draws me to it, where I can't just turn around and say, I'm not going to deliver these messages because of the repercussions that could come to me and what people think about me. It's so much bigger than that, and it's so worth it. In the Josh episode, when the first thing that Josh said to his dad was, "Dad, I didn't kill myself," that was literally 20 years of weight on the father's shoulders that was lifted in one sentence from his son. So if that doesn't make you want to do something and make you want to pursue it, I don't know what will. But for me, it's these experiences that make me want to keep moving forward, that make me want to share this podcast, share my experiences, share my journey, and reach as many people as I can, because these things can change lives. They can affect how people live. Messages from your loved ones, hearing what you need to hear, is just so powerful. It is literally unexplainable until it happens to you. And I wish that everybody has an experience with the other side or with the spirit. And I hope that you can change your mind. So back to the wedding, there was one more thing that happened in that night. So my other cousin, I have a lot of cousins, was asking me all night, "Steph, do you have anything for me? Steph, do you have anything for me?" We were dancing and she'd come up beside me and be like, "Steph, do you have anything for me?" And I always say, "Oh, you have to be close to me." So she'd dance even closer. And she just kept saying, anything for me, anything for me. Steph, what about me? So then finally I said, okay, I have something for you, but it's not for you. It's for a friend of yours. I said, this friend lives in Michigan, and it's a girl, and she has 2 sisters. And the person that's trying to come through, their name starts with J-E. I said, it's a man, and he passed recently of a death that wasn't supposed to happen. It was a tragic death. He was way too young to die. He was in his mid-30s, early 30s, and he wasn't supposed to die. So this wasn't like he had cancer and he died, something happened and he died. No, he was somewhere, something happened, and he wasn't supposed to die when he did. I said he would have died recently, but recently for me means in the past year. And then I said his message is for a girl, and he wants her to know that life isn't fair. He said she needs to hear this right now, and he knows his death wasn't fair, life isn't fair, it never was going to be fair, it never is going to be fair, but she needs to move on, and she still needs to live her life because she can't keep searching for answers and holding on to the past. Life isn't fair. He knows life isn't fair. He knows he wasn't supposed to die, but he did, and he wanted her to just move on and keep living her life the way she wants to. So I was telling this to my friend, and I said, I don't know what his name is, but his name starts with J-E, and this message is for your friend, and it might not make sense to you, but it's going to really make sense for her. So I was in Ontario for this visit for the wedding for just 2 days, and then I went back home to Banff, and a month later I went back for a visit for a week. And when I went back during that week, my cousin, she came up to me and she said, Steph, I found out who my friend was, who the message was for. And to be honest, I had forgotten that I even had said that to her. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, remember when you told me at the wedding, that man that died, and his name started with J-E, and you told me it was for my friend who had 2 sisters? And I was like, oh yeah. She said, I found out who it was for. I only have 2 girlfriends from Michigan who both have 2 sisters. And the one friend, her name is Jessica, J-E. And her first cousin recently passed away, and he was in his mid-30s, and he died in a car crash in a car that he wasn't even supposed to be in. And his girlfriend was named Jessica, also J-E, and his first name started with J-E. So she said, at first I thought the message was for my friend Jessica about her cousin. But then when I told her about it, she said, no, this message is for his girlfriend. So at the time, the girlfriend was trying to decide what she should do for school. So she wanted to move away for school, but she felt guilty. So she was going to stay for school, but she knows that that's not what he would have wanted her to do. He would have wanted her to live her life. And she was going back and forth with this guilt of what to do. And she was really stuck because she didn't know how to move forward. So my cousin said she needed to hear that from him because she was so held up on the past that she couldn't move forward. And she said that it was kind of the hard message that she needed to hear. So she said, I was really happy that I found out which friend it was for because I could deliver that message. And my friend, who it was her cousin that passed, was really happy that the girlfriend heard what she needed to hear from him. So that is the full story of what happened at my cousin's wedding. After that, I said, I'm done, I'm off, and I ran to the dance floor, and I just wanted to continue to enjoy the rest of the night. But it was still really special and really nice to be able to deliver these messages to people who needed to hear it. And I really believe that when spirit needs to get through, when you need to hear a message, they will find a way to get it to you. They will find a way to communicate, even if it's at a wedding at 11 p.m. So thank you again for listening. I am so appreciative that people listen to my podcast and that you are interested in my story and in my journey. Thank you for everyone who has told a friend about me. If you haven't told a friend, tell a friend. Anyone looking for a podcast to listen to, they have quite a lot of content now to catch up on. And as I mentioned, I release a podcast every Tuesday. So if you press that subscribe button, it will pop up in your library every Tuesday. So thank you again for listening. My name is Stephanie. I am the medium in the middle, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.